One of the first things that caught my attention at FatCon was that they have reclaimed the word fat. To them, it is not a negative word. And that really got me thinking, as someone in a straight size body, is why do we consider the word fat so bad? When we think about the word fat, it is a descriptive word, which means by definition, it cannot be good or bad. It is simply a descriptive word. So how does our society manipulate us into thinking that this is the end all be all, one of those 7 deadly sins? Well, I think it's right there. Our society has grown up with this idea of the 7 deadly sins, one of them being gluttony, which we have then personified to mean fat. We have all been raised using phrases like, oh, are you really going to eat that? Or, forever on your lips, forever on your hips, something like that, or a moment on your lip. Either way, we've been raised with this fear of the word fat, and it has trickled into us as a society because now we look at this community like it's something that we should be scared of. And it's really not something to be scared of. Fat phobia is prevalent everywhere in our society. We see it all the time, even these days, with fat characters not being made the primary character. It's always the best friend, because who would want a fat main character? But here's what we can do as allies is ask ourselves why it makes us uncomfortable. The word fat, someone else living in a fat body, makes no difference to us. So why do we let it affect us so much? What it comes down to is that it is an internalized fear that we need to work through. One of the first things that I noticed at FatCon 2025 in Seattle was that they have taken back the word fat, and they have taken it out of this place where they're scared of it and owned it again. So that's the first thing I want to talk about is, can fat be a bad word? Because when we think about it, fat is a descriptive word. It is how we describe someone in a larger body. It cannot be good, it cannot be bad. It is simply descriptive, just like I am tall. It cannot be good, it cannot be bad. So why have we associated the word fat to mean something negative? Now, when we think about fat being negative, what we're really thinking about is gluttony. And gluttony is one of the 7 deadlies, which makes sense as to why our society is so fearful of it. We have all grown up with phrases like, what's that phrase? Moment on your lips, forever on your hips. That was a big one in my house. Or, do you really want to eat that? We have entrenched our society and our communities in this fear of being scared of living in a larger body. But when you think about it, people live in larger bodies all over the place. We see it all the time. You probably have a friend of yours who lives in a larger body. You might live in a larger body. So when we think about this, you don't think negative thoughts about them, just like they don't think negative thoughts about you. So why do we put this pressure on ourselves to live in what we would call a society's accepted frame or shape? One thing I also noticed is that fat phobia runs rampant throughout our society, living in a small body or living in a larger body. When we think about it, this fear of living in a larger body says way more about you, the person who's having those thoughts, than it does about them, the person who is simply living their life. So first thing we can do as someone who is a fat community ally is really internalize those questions as to why someone living their lives makes us so uncomfortable. Why does it make us uncomfortable to see a person in a larger body be the star of some movie? Why would it make you uncomfortable to watch someone who has all of the characteristics of a movie star, but in a larger body? If you can answer those questions and look inward instead of putting our rage onto somebody else, then that is step 1. Step 2 is considering that 40% of Americans are considered obese and an additional 30% are considered overweight. And then in Canada, that number drops down to 30% are considered obese and an additional 35.5% are considered overweight. Who knows if those numbers are actually true? Me, standing at 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, have a BMI of 27.1, which would put me in the overweight category. Because these stats are all run by BMI, we actually have no idea what those numbers really are. But as you can see with this skirt, which is labeled an extra large, there's a huge inconsistency with what resources are available. Now, as you can see, the skirt is labeled an extra large. I usually wear a medium or a size 8. So there is a huge huge discrepancy with the availability of general resources, things like clothing, chairs, tables, just a myriad of things that they just don't have access to because of the body they live in. And that was really surprising to me. What was surprising to me was over 50% of the population being in this category. How are there so few resources available to them with things that we need every single day? Things like clothing. What was really surprising to me was that there was this little huge lack of resources with things that they need every single day. Things like clothing, things like chairs, things like just shoes, and having that ability to feel comfortable in their surroundings. We're not even talking about going outside. We're talking about their surroundings at home. Now, there are some absolutely fantastic creators who are doing the work to create some of these missing pieces, but I never considered that they would have such problems, I guess, in their own homes and in having things available to them. Now, I never considered, because it's just not something that I would think of, that they would have these kind of issues at home. But it is something that I can do as an ally to be more aware and actually support the clothing brands, the clothing companies, the local resources that they have available to make sure that they are producing clothing and calling out the ones that are mislabeling clothing like this skirt. Because when it comes down to it, the more voices that have this demand who say that this is important to us, the more likely they are to make a change. Lesson number 3 is really that allies, we need to do better. And it was heart-wrenching to see and hear some of these stories about people who wanted to go to the gym and who had the unfortunate experience of being filmed in the gym and that video going viral and having some really nasty comments made. And that is 100% on us. It is on us to make sure that these people in general feel like a place to move their body is a safe space, because we all remember the first time we walked into the gym. We all remember going someplace that we felt vulnerable and uncomfortable, and we were not made to feel welcome. And I don't understand how even seeing some of these comments online can just be so cruel and so rude, to the point where I've seen death threats on some of my friends' videos. And I'm asking for us, the allies who are there, who see these people as people living their lives, to do better. And it's actually really easy to do better. We can stand in front of a camera. If you notice someone at the gym filming someone, stand in front of the camera so that you do not condone this behavior, because that's what it comes down to, is other people allowing this behavior to exist, and that's just not okay. And other ways that we can be there as allies is by being the one to step up when we're going to a restaurant. When the hostess wants to seat us at a high top table that you know will be uncomfortable for that friend we're going with, ask to sit at a different table. If they're sitting us at a booth where the table doesn't move, be the one to step up and say, hey, actually, can we sit somewhere else? Because this is a vulnerable spot for them, and by you sticking up for your friend, it shows that you care about their surroundings and about their comfort. So that was a couple of really big places that I know that I can personally do better, and that I'm sharing with you in hopes that we can all create a better space. The 4th lesson I'm taking away from this is that this community, in very large part, is what I would consider healthy. If they were living in a smaller body, they would be applauded for their balance, for working out and eating well and having all of these attributes that we consider a plus if they were living in a smaller body. We, in smaller bodies, make assumptions about the way that they eat, about the fact that they work out or don't work out. But when it comes down to it, I go to the gym. I consider myself a fit person, and I was schooled, happily so, by the amount of weight that they were able to pick up and put back down at a pace that I will not be able to get to. I probably won't be able to get to there. And they were swimming and moving their body, doing yoga. Like, they were doing all of the right thing. The thing that was different is that their genetics weren't playing ball. And regardless if if you think like calories in versus calories out or whatever, that again is an assumption that you're making about someone else's body. And when it comes down to it, we don't want people talking about our bodies, so why are we talking about them? To make the assumption that they're just at home, like sitting on a couch eating pizza because that's what we've seen on the media, is rude and uncalled for. And it is something that I think I will be standing up for people a lot more than what I have in the past. Big lesson for me to learn there. The fifth and final lesson is that the algorithms actively suppress fat creators. It's pretty crazy the amount of censorship that happens on some of these apps. And that is one thing that we can do as allies, is shout out these voices. When you see a fat creator, share it, like it, interact with this algorithm. They have such an amazing sense of style, sense of community. Being allowed into it is truly a gift. So if you can find yourself on that side of insert social media here, take advantage of it. Enjoy some of their styling, enjoy some of what they're tattooing, their art, their creations, because this community is so full of creativity and hope, and it is really special to see their style come out, especially when they're not using clothing to hide. So yeah, those are the 5 lessons I learned at FatCon 2025. Now, there are some resources that I have linked in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed some of these lessons that I learned firsthand. And if there's anything I missed, please let me know, because we're all in this together.